Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town. This is my favorite game in the series, and one of the only ones I had as a kid. It's not gonna stop me from criticizing it though.
There's so much namespace, cool! I wish every game had that much namespace.
I really didn't need shipping explained to me. It is lame that you don't make money off shipped items until the day after a festival if it's a festival day. Unlike in the first game where the shipper came over on festival days. So why is this a better game than the previous one? Aside from the obvious that you aren't restricted to only 2 days where you can buy seeds and animals. And you're never gonna have to worry about being stuck in bed all day because you worked in the rain.
It doesn't look as nice buying animals from a list.
I get to start out with a honey tree that produces apples in the fall. And the harvest sprites love honey. After you go to the lake, you have to walk for a while to go all the way back home. There's no shortcut down the mountain, and every time you go to the north side of town, you gotta go all the way back home. The level design's too linear. It'd be best if your farm was in the center. I hate that you have to go into the inventory screen and have the cursor over the watering can to know how much water is left. And even then, that doesn't tell you how many times you can fully charge it up and use it. So it'll always come as a surprise when you run out of water because you don't see a water meter on the screen at all times. Which is always a problem in the series. Especially since you still use up stamina even when you're out of water in the earliest games. But that's not the case here.
Rucksack upgrades are bought at the supermarket. Rather than getting the better bag handed to you on your birthday, you have to earn the rucksack upgrades by earning the money for them. By the point in the game where the second upgrade comes on sale, its price isn't an inconvenience. But the first upgrade is terrible for costing you anything considering that the starting bag size is so small. You also have to wait an arbitrary amount of time you're not told about before the last rucksack goes on sale. And something easy to not know is that you can get a tool straight from iron to mystery level because the blacksmith lets you upgrade a tool to whatever metal is an improvement. They took advantage of time being frozen in the mines to put hundreds of floors in it, which is hours of your life wasted. The fishing rod's the worst to upgrade because it takes longer to use it than the other tools. Way too many stores of this game close too early for my liking, like at 5 PM. Why can't they close after you get your money? In 64, giving gifts to one of the sprites counted for all of them. Why can't they do that again? The harvest sprites have experience bars that aren't affected by their affection level this time. There's the option to play a minigame with the sprite to raise their experience bar in one stat. And these minigames take an entire minute. I think the difference from doing those minigames enough times isn't one you're actually gonna notice. But a kid's not gonna know that. Doing minigame with every sprite is a massive pace breaker. Pretty soon, I stopped playing them. The animal feed minigame is fun, but the harvest one is literally just mashing A and making sure not to mash it too fast, or you'll have to press A more slowly. You can do it with your eyes closed. So the only reason I don't like it is how long it takes. And the watering game forces you to memorize where to water in a place full of soil. But there's way too much soil, so it's harder than it looks. One of the things that didn't age well about Friends of Mineral Town is that you can't sell all the perfectly good flowers around. When that isn't the case in the previous game. That was kind of fixed in more Friends of Mineral Town. But not in a way that was good enough, obviously, because you still can't ship them. It's a pain in the ass to merely have to keep flowers in your 9-item bag, and sell them all to one at a time, and then have to go back to get more flowers. When I played this file, I didn't do any ranching, as both a way to make the game more fun and go buy a lot faster. It was an experiment to see how long it'd take to buy everything. It's actually worth it. As long as you watched the TV shopping channel, you can still order something over the phone the next day. But a lot of players aren't going to know that and try it. I forgot about this. Another thing you'll only find out if you're desperate is that you can still hire sprites on festival days.
I hate that Mary's last heart event skips time ahead by hours so far that you won't be able to go into any buildings for the day. At least events don't end the day. I hate that after you've chosen which task you want a sprite to do, you can't back out of it when trying to choose the amount of days.
But that's not new.
You can't talk to one of them again and change your mind if you made a mistake.
This applies to 3, but its default option was harmless, so it didn't matter.
I hate that there even is an option for 1 day because it's completely pointless. It's not like there's a penalty for hiring sprites for a longer amount of time like in DS. If you have enough money, it doesn't even matter if you have them losing their hearts faster. If it's better to hire them for a week, then the 3 days option is a waste of time. You're better off not giving them gifts when they're working, and instead wait for them to slack off in front of the tree because they're done work. Giving gifts to people in general is harder because you can run through them. The sprites start walking out of your farm as early as 9. The library's many bookshelves don't tell you everything you'd really need to know, let alone to get 100%. And instead mostly just tell you the obvious stuff. So let's see if there's anything wrong with them. The second bookshelf, on Animal Festival minigames, while the bookshelf tells you that you can't enter with a pony, it doesn't tell you the vital information of how to get a horse. Because God forbid you simply buy it. Instead, Barley gives you a pony at some point, after you talk to him. The bookshelf instead gives you the bad advice to not always go for the sure winner when betting on a horse. It's bad enough gambling is in the game. I hate that you can only exchange medals for a prize 1 at a time. It takes forever to fully fill the basket with truffles. I've read a guide saying that you should do brooches instead of truffles, and for the remake they say you should do dresses. And it's lame that you can't exit the festival before all of its horse races are done, and have to go all the way back to the square to get to the beach, because leaving from anywhere sends you home. Every festival traps you in it. If it's called Rose Square, by the way, where are all the roses? The third bookshelf tells you the controls. This bookshelf doesn't tell you that pressing A and B together brings up the item menu a lot faster. L Start brings up the world map, and L Select brings up the farm map, where for no good reason you aren't shown which stage of growth your crops are in and just shown them fully grown. But it does tell you which ones were watered. The fourth bookshelf tells you the obvious about raising crops, like the fact that you can waste seeds in this game. I used to appreciate the time was frozen in the mines because you made more money that way, but it makes passing the days take forever when you can spend so much time in the mines. So it would actually be better if instead, mining items weren't ridiculously cheap in their selling price. The most valuable bookshelf is the fifth one, which tells you up front how many days each crop takes to grow. I wish the game just said the amount of days instead of forcing you to add the days together for each phase. Who would care about how many days it takes to get past the earliest phases? The first bookshelf on the second floor just tells you the obvious about mining. It doesn't even tell you exactly how many stamina and fatigue points the black grass will recover, which is barely any. It tells you to eat power berries immediately, even though you'll do that automatically. The second bookshelf gives you an important hint about how to get the fishing rod. But if you go into Juan's shop curious about what he's selling, you'll find the rod without the bookshelf just by playing the game. You'd think that the information about where and when to fish to catch every species of fish in particular would be put in the fishing bookshelf, instead of you being forced to either look up a guide or watch the fishing show on Mondays to get spoon-fed a tiny bit of information every time. The show doesn't even tell you which fishing rod level to use. The third top bookshelf tells you the obvious about ranching. It tells you exactly how long it takes for a chick to hatch and grow up separately. Twice as fast. And how long it takes for a cow you bought to become an adult. A week. Which is faster than I'm used to. 3 times as fast. For no reason, a lamb takes 2 weeks to grow up instead. The
game tells you that you have to brush them and talk to them once a day, rather than telling you the truth that once you've raised them to max hearts, you don't have to waste your time with that anymore. So the book lied. The fourth bookshelf is empty and lets you connect with a wonderful life. It says barely anything, and nothing you wouldn't already know from the game. But you can just read a connectivity guide to read everything about the characters in that game that would have been in that bookshelf. The fifth bookshelf just tells you the obvious about the various stores in the game. But it would have been nice to actually be told that the maximum it could cost to upgrade a tool would be 5000 G, or that you can skip tool levels. The supermarket book doesn't bother to tell you anything except the obvious. So you're not told that you can go in there to buy stuff past 5 PM if you get care enough to Blue Heart by buying stuff from it regularly. It doesn't tell you that you can go into stores earlier by befriending the owner. It lies to you that you wouldn't be able to buy an ingredient more than one at a time without a fridge. And what is this about some ingredients are only sold seasonally? Speaking of misinformation, you cannot buy anything while you're holding something. Thank goodness that's not true. Befriending the harvest sprites earlier on would be miserable. The guy will just deliver it to your fridge or shelf if you have one. For some reason, the blue feather goes on sale when a girl's at Orange Heart. I hate that the seed shop in this game has 2 days off. But if I can say one extra good thing about the supermarket, it's that Mary likes chocolate. That's great for fall when it's the only gift she likes I can find until I can make vegetable juice, because there aren't any blue grass until it's spring again. The market's close to her and only costs the same amount of money a blue grass would make you. And it's lame that the only way you can put something in the fridge or shelf if it's gift wrapped is to take off the gift wrap you had to pay for. Considering that costs 100 G and can only be done at the supermarket, I think gift wrapping is a waste of time and money for the bachelorette you're wooing specifically, because thanks to the way the TV shopping channel works, you have to wait until year 2 to propose successfully anyways, so why get it to red heart faster? If you give a bachelorette every day you can, you'll probably have her at max points by the 19th of fall. The game lies to you about Gotts's shop working hours. It says on the sign that he's closed on Saturdays, but what it doesn't say is that it's also closed sometime after 12. Because when it's 12, he's busy walking around the forest for no reason. Under expanding your house, it says that you can also build a second floor. No, you can't. It's cool that expanding your coop can let you use 2 incubators. Why do you have to expand your coop and barn to be able to order the building of the makers anyways? It's actually a downgrade from the previous game that you even have to expand your barn and coop, instead of being able to get 8 animals from the start. The clinic bookshelf doesn't tell you about the ballpark range of how much stamina and fatigue points you have depending on what the doctor will tell you about your health. But it's a useless waste of a small amount of money, because they're probably going to remember what your last stamina animation was. I'm not at max stamina here, so what's the point of this? The bookshelf also reminds me that the winery has a ridiculously small amount of store hours. Not that it matters, because since when will you care about buying wine or grape juice? It's useful of the bookshelf to tell you that you can make chicken feed by putting corn in the water wheel near the coop. A sign near the water wheel tells you that anyways. But you're probably not going to read that sign because you're just going to think it tells you something self-explanatory. Being able to make chicken feed is good for emergencies. Of course, you have to think to stock up on corn just in case though. And it's so much better to just ship the corn for all the money it makes, and just remember to keep buying chicken feed. It's shocking that the price for a chicken is not told to you by this bookshelf, which could have saved you a trip to the poultry farm. The bookshelf doesn't ever tell you the exact prices of any of the stores, which could save you a trip there. It does remind you of the fact that the cow store closes ridiculously early, closing at 3 PM. It won't bother you though, because I'm always in town before that time. The bookshelf lies to you that in one shop, different seeds are sold in different seasons, His job is a convenient feature of selling those seeds all year long. And it won't tell you how to use the frisbee, which you'd think you would be able to use anywhere, and not just at the public beach with your dog. It also would have been nice if the bookshelf warned you not to waste your money on the Jewel of Truth, because you won't be able to get all of them until 50 years in-game. And it should tell you not to buy the frisbee until the second year, because your dog can't play with the frisbee as a puppy. For no reason. There's also more stuff you could have figured out on your own, but at least it'd be trying to be useful. The 6th bookshelf tells you that you need a shelf because you need a place to hold your kitchen utensils. Which is thankfully just another bit of misinformation. You don't actually get room in your shelf permanently spent on holding utensils. The 7th bookshelf on top tells you the obvious about tools. The bookshelf doesn't bother to tell you why you should ever have the pedometer in your tool bag. Enough steps on it gets the goddess to congratulate you. You can actually marry her in this game, and there's a lot more strict requirements for it, which somehow involve fish for the harvest goddess. But don't bother marrying her because she doesn't bother living in your house. The game never tells you how to summon the goddess, and you certainly wouldn't think that if you keep it up after the first reward, you get offered a small boost of affection to the girl of your choice. I read that if you want to marry the goddess, and you choose a different girl here, you can't marry her. The game never warns you about that either. She never even explains why she won't live with you. She does, but she's too vague. I don't know what those duties are. You'd think you would have gotten to know her better after getting married, so you should have been told what those duties were. She doesn't do anything in the spring, she just stands there all day. I'm imagining all she ever does is watch TV. So why can't she do that at home? The book also warns you of the nonsense that you could have learned anyways, that you can't shear pregnant sheep. The 8th bookshelf tells you that you can get the harvest sprites to help out at your farm, which is actually vital information for a new player who never know otherwise that they could do that, because not everyone's gonna talk to everybody in the town in a time management based game, so you're focused on making as much money in the little time you have. The 9th bookshelf is completely worthless. It tells you the obvious about stamina and fatigue, but doesn't bother to tell you exactly how many points of stamina and fatigue will be restored from entering the hot spring. It doesn't tell you the vital information that you should limit your time in the hot spring to 2 hours. It doesn't tell you that things changed since Harvest Moon Super Nintendo in the previous game, and you actually do need to stay in the hot spring for a while instead of just hopping in and out of it. Also, it tells you that putting a flower in the vase will do, something, but it doesn't bother telling you which flowers have an effect or how useful it is. Why can't all of the flowers restore fatigue points? That makes just as much sense as one of them doing it. Wouldn't it be nice if the bookshelf told you what day of the year one tries to sell the vase for? Game FAQs doesn't tell me. It's not always the first day of a month. The bookshelf also tells you that if you throw wood in the fireplace in the winter specifically, you'll recover some fatigue points. You'll need a guide to find out where you can get the Jewels of Truth, especially because you won't find them when you don't have a shelf, thankfully. I felt like looking up whether the winery job pays more than working normally, which is what sucks about him not telling you how much it pays. That once again you have to trust that the game's going to be fair about it. I love a few things about the winery job in the autumn. I love that if you show up at the winery after 10 exactly, you don't get a lecture about being late. Why can't the Harvest Sprite tent ever be open past 6? I can't hire sprites on the day of the winery job because I run out of time to. But it is cool that you can still see some things in the shipping list even before you shipped one of them. When you're mining, you always end up having your inventory full anyways because the basket only holds 30 items. So you have to end up throwing things away in exchange for more valuable items that you just got. It's hard to memorize the prices of every other fancy ore and gem past gold to know which one to keep around. As you can see, a lot of problems with the game become worse if you try to save up for the townhouse.
At least you can fish with time-frozen beach festivals. You have to look up how to get in the confessional. It's disappointing how it's random which options you're given, so you can't always confess that you overworked the harvest sprites.
I can't get the second option on my main files. The middle and last line, I just can't get them, no matter how many times I reload.
You'd think someone who is mean enough that sometimes he refuses to forgive you would just tell you that he doesn't believe you about you hiring the sprites. Wouldn't he make a big deal out of you hiring immortal beings to work on your farm? The game never tells you that you can get minor affection bonus with irrelevant people or animals if you pick the right option at the confessional, which you can only use for a confession once a day. This isn't intuitive. I'd expect that you get a decrease in affection from this since Carter yells at you and says the goddess hasn't forgiven you, which isn't something the priest in a confessional is supposed to do, and isn't in character for him either. I thought it was a pointless detail that was only there to make the church seem like a real church, and it's random whether you're told that you weren't forgiven. Of course, if you say before the confessional, you can reload afterwards to get the forgiveness text. And when you aren't forgiven, you don't get the affection boost or stamina and fatigue replenishing, depending on which option you chose. The affection boost could probably save me the time of giving a gift to a sprite, but I'd have to go all the way to the church to do this. It'd take less time to gift the sprites. I looked up how to get the kingfish. The kingfish are handled more creatively than they were in the previous game, which I have a bit of respect for. For example, you need to fish in the hot spring for one. You'd end up checking everywhere you can fish and find it eventually. The problem is, the game starts the trend of needing a guide to catch almost every kingfish in the game, unless that fishing channel tells you how to catch these guys. And it really doesn't. You need a guide because the fishing channel doesn't give you all the information. Even if it did, having to tune in every Monday to watch it episode by episode will take forever. And you could easily forget stuff from it after a lot of time, so you'd have to write some of it down. Anyone trying for all of the kingfish is going to try to do it all at once. So the fishing channel would only show up for one day of the process, assuming it only takes a week. And probably won't be airing a kingfish episode, because it only airs those at the end of the month. Anyone trying to get them all is probably going to use the internet. You wouldn't think any fish could survive the hot spring. So I never thought there'd be a fish in there. But it might be possible for someone to think a kingfish is there because kingfish are special fish, so they could be magical. It's also intuitive that there's a kingfish in the lake in the winter mine. At least it's only on the 9th level. Oh, but you can only catch it after you caught all of the other kingfish. The fishing channel does tell you this, but it goes out of its way to avoid telling you where to catch it. So you won't know what fish the channel's talking about. What if it's not the last one you go for?
It'd be the first one you try due to its location, because you're always going to discover it when going through the mine.
You can only catch the Japanese hutchin after making sushi, sashimi, and grilled fish. But it's not a problem because trying to catch all the kingfish is something you'd only do after you were done with everything else in the game. Except for the townhouse, because most people aren't going to bother with that. You apparently have to throw a small fish in the ocean to be able to fish up the squid. So you'll be hoping that doesn't count as littering and make the town lose affection for you. It'd be stupid if it did. How is throwing a still living fish back in the ocean littering? But it's not like the game gives you a visual indicator that you did litter. I think this is the first game that has littering, so you won't even know about it. The only kingfish you'd be able to catch without a guide is the monkfish, because you could do that by accident, especially since the sea's the only place you'd fish anytime you do go fishing in the summer and autumn. What's thankfully the only requirement for the carp is, you have to ship over 200 fish. You might have already done that by that point, but it sucks if you haven't. Sweet potatoes are a multi-harvest crop that have a new crop every day after they start producing. They make you a huge amount of money if you just plant a bunch of them and hire the sprites.
Harvest sprites like apples, so fall is convenient for you. On Winter 29th, you can't see the TV shopping channel because of a boring other show replacing it. The game introduced relationship decay, so befriending isn't a permanent accomplishment, which means you don't have to do it unless you care about seeing all the events. In my current playthrough, I only did mining both to upgrade my tools and because if I was going to be spamming the hammer in order to upgrade it, I might as well use it on the rocks. Without having to do any ranching or fishing, after giving up on mining in the middle of the fall, my character got married in early summer of year 2 with tons of money the last time I played the game. Combining the almost lack of stuff to buy in the game with the fact that you can almost completely automate the farming, which defeats the appeal of playing a farming game when all you're really doing is foraging and fishing. I hate to say it, but this game gets too easy. The first spring was too hard because the tool upgrading system sucks and so is the inventory system. And I don't know why you can't cut stumps with the regular axe, and can't destroy boulders until upgrading the hammer anymore. See my Magical Melody review for anything I didn't talk about regarding this game, like all the festivals and why ranching takes forever. I didn't talk about all the character events either. It's just dialogue, really, so there's nothing to say about it. They're interesting. That's all I'd have to say. It's a realistic, level-headed game for the most part. About normal people living in a normal, old-fashioned town. It's not like it's sci-fi or fantasy, so it's not gonna have a bunch of moments that stretch believability. There would be a point to me talking about the Harvest Moon events if there were a bunch of plot holes I could expose. Not just in this game, but in 64 as well. The problem with this game compared to Back to Nature is that they made it more challenging, but in the wrong sort of way. The challenge it was supposed to add was give us more things to buy, and not in the blatant padding way that the TV shopping channel does it. You're still doing nothing but sleeping after the middle of fall. The problem is that you don't have to save up to buy any of the TV shopping stuff, because you have all the money that you need by the fall. They should have had a third house expansion, and you had to keep making money until the spring so that you could afford it. When talking about this, I appreciate that I didn't have to keep playing the game so long because it made my review a lot faster to make. But obviously that's not the normal gameplay experience. I think you're supposed to have a Harvest Moon game still have stuff to do at least until you get married. And there's nothing to do for months before you get married. That's pretty weird compared to Harvest Moon 64. And for the sake of making this review, it was very convenient that I could automate farming. But then it doesn't feel as much like a farming game if you're not doing any of the actual harvesting yourself. It's the sprites that are earning the money for you.